Fantastic. Well, we have Lorena Wang, who's head of digital innovation and fintech partnership, HSBC. Plus, she's taking on a new role soon, so that's great. Congratulations on that. And then Ed Maslevekis, co-founder of Bud. It's a platform that is financial services all in one place.
Yep.
All right, fantastic. Maybe just give a little intro on the company and your role, and then we can jump in.
So I'm Ed. I'm one of the co-founders of Bud. So what Bud is, for people who don't know, it's many different things to describe how you describe it. It could be a platform, it could be a network. We see that as essentially the same thing. So I think, as the previous speaker outlined, we're in a world where, because of open APIs, actually customers can start to sort of blur the lines of what their banking experience becomes, right? So where is their banking experience? Is it in the traditional bank? Is it somewhere else? Is it through another app, website, anything really? What Bud does is we bring APIs together to create unique experiences. And those unique experiences can sit in a bank app, they can sit wherever really the customer is. So very much we see ourselves as a network, because not only do we create these sort of API-based experiences, we recommend what APIs, aka products, are for customers to be using in those experiences. We also allow the other side of the market to actually, how do we distribute, how does a bank, how does any institution in this sort of world of network distribute their products through third-party experiences? Because we're seeing that not banks actually, most banks, or pretty much every bank I've spoken to, wants to become a platform of some sort. They also understand they need to distribute somewhere else. So BBVA have been very good at this. And open banking has really meant that all banks, or most banks in the UK, have had to create some sort of middle API layer, which is allowing this type of stuff to start happening, essentially.
Great, thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Lorena Wang, and I work for HSBC UK. For today and tomorrow, at least, I have one of the coolest jobs in a bank, which is working with fintechs and to bring innovative solutions and innovative thinking into the organization. And we've been working with Bud since last February, I would say.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So we're going to talk a lot about today, just over the next 30 minutes, around collaboration. That's one of the key monikers of this type of relationship. And speaking broadly, why was the collaboration high on the agenda for HSBC and Bud? What was the inspiration for it?
Well, I guess, again, as outlined by previous speakers and Ed just now, in this day and age, we can't afford to be insular and work on our own, because too many things are happening, and frankly we can all predict the future and loads of hypotheses, but no one actually knows how the future will pan out, with so many different changes coming from regulation side and technology side and other markets. So test and learn is a very important item on our agenda. So to best test and learn rapidly, the most logical way is to collaborate with other partners.
Fantastic.
I think actually the collaboration tends to be thought of in sort of silos of, okay, now we've got a new solution, we bolt it onto an experience, and we kind of hope that that's going to be the thing that changes the world, right? Changes like, oh, we've got this many customers, now we're going to acquire, the rest of the customers because we have like this new bolt-on. And that just isn't the case. It creates a slightly better experience, it creates something slightly more compelling, but actually, I think the thing we realized was actually, collaboration is key to create compelling experiences for customers, but actually it's not just one collaboration. It's, test and learn hundreds of collaborations and be able to actually do that at speed, which I think the banks are quite happy to admit that they can't test at speed. They can't test many things at speed. It costs a lot of money. There's large amount of risk compliance that you have to go through. And that should be there, because the bank is somewhere which is very safe, very trusted. Right. But actually, to sort of move forward in this, in the world of experience, you need to be doing this stuff all the time. So, a lot of the large tech companies have, 20 different versions of their products. And each one of those is a slightly different experience. There's always something being tested on that chain. And by the time it gets into the customer's hand, it's proven, it works great. But the initial stuff, the dog food, as we call it, is pretty crap, but there's some gems in there, and it's figuring out what those gems are. And I think that's with banking going the way it is, with it becoming an open network, which it has to be, that actually, the word collaboration doesn't really do it justice. It's really this idea that what happens across networks. So actually we're seeing that not is it just kind of one or two experiences, it's actually creating these open platforms where, hey, guess what, vendors can come on and build new stuff, and that is of value to any sort of institution. And we've seen the in the East versions of what open platforms have become. We don't have to name names, but we know what that looks like. And the Western reaction has been, okay, well let's do some aggregation, which is kind of really only the beginning bit.
Okay.
So yeah.
So it sounds like it's a journey, and I love that it's not just a collaboration. Maybe get a little more specific on how the teams are actually working together. What are those things that you do to work more efficiently?
So I'll kick off.
Please.
What we set up was kind of key to our collaboration is actually a project team that is 50-50 HSBC or 50-50 First Direct and HSBC and Bud with sponsors that kind of help get the things done inside the institutions. For our side, it's pretty easy. It's pretty straightforward. People in the sponsor is me, and I'm in the team, so it's fine. But from the other side, it's really key to actually, when you start to do something and work with a scale the size of HSBC's, 200,000 employees, everyone wants to be involved somehow, and everyone has a valid issue or a point to make. But it's actually, the key is that all decisions, all conversations, everything has to go through that collaboration team. And that project team makes the decisions around everything. And that's what's, I know I hesitate to use the word agile, but that's what's kept us somewhat agile in the non-development sense, to basically innovate.
I think I just want to add trust is the fundamental part in this collaboration or the working together. So one trust is from the internal side. We are a very complex organization, but the project team has the trust from internal to make all the decisions. So we don't need to say, wait a minute, we need to go to this committee, that exco, and 10 months later, right, here's your decision, and it's a no decision. So we do have that very empowered project team. And then the other side of the trust is the trust with Bud, because you can't really work together as a team if you're constantly thinking about my best interest, your best interest. I think we are very open and transparent with each other, and that has worked really well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's around that alignment of goals. If you're misaligned, then it's just not going to work.
Well, it sounds like the uniqueness of how you work together spawns some uniqueness about the marketplace. So maybe we talk a little bit about the marketplace and something that the challengers have been talking a lot about. But HSBC via, I guess, First Direct is arguably the most mainstream bank to offer this kind of service. So what was the strategy and how's it developed and where's it going?
So I think just to give everybody a context of what we're actually talking about, we are currently in pilot with 2,000 First Direct customers with a product called Arthur, A-R-T-H-A, Arthur by First Direct. What Arthur by First Direct offers is you can manage all your accounts in one place. Everyone's doing that, so that's kind of every day you need that. Based on that, we then draw insights and in the long run, maybe not immediately yet, be able to give you recommendations of areas you might be underserviced or areas that you could consider looking into that will benefit you, both your financial situation and make your everyday life easier. And we fulfill that with what we call marketplace. In a marketplace, currently, we have several different product lines. And in financial products, we have loans, credit cards, and wealth. And in the non-financial side, we have the utility switching. In the long run, you can see this marketplace expand both within the financial services and maybe in the non-financial services like points or other things that will make your life easier. So this is basically Arthur. The reason why we did it and chose Bud to work with us on it is First Direct is a very unique brand in the UK. Although it's part of HSBC Group, but it is much more loved, I would say. It sparks certain reaction out of British, especially among a certain generation. We really want to bring that into the, bring it into even the more modern world. So First Direct aspire to be the most personal and relevant brand, not just a financial services brand, but the brand. And to achieve that, you basically want to be very relevant to your customers. And when we first talked to Bud, it just seemed to be a very good fit, that Bud can help us to deliver this vision, which is currently being trialled within the FCA's regulatory sandbox. And we're closely monitoring the performance, and hopefully that will be a much longer journey.
Very cool. Very, very great. So maybe, Ed, we just focus on your marketplace a little bit and give us a feel for the strategy, how it came about, and how do you see it growing?
It's interesting. There's obviously a lot of talk about marketplaces at the moment, and it's something we've been jumping up and down about for sort of just over 3 years. Personally, I've been on that journey for about 4 years now, and now we're starting to see some of the challenger brands launch marketplaces, and we're seeing banks launch marketplaces. The question fundamentally is, what is a marketplace, and why do we use one? So what you see today in a marketplace is a list of products, and you can kind of acquire those, and through API connections, you can start to use those in a more seamless way. That data then informs sort of a general purpose intelligence, or not general purpose intelligence, a specific intelligence that would then help the customer, nudge them, help them to do the right things. Now, that's somewhat interesting and nice and fun, and it helps people, and that's great. But actually, like, why do we care about marketplaces? Well, really the most fundamental thing about finance is that in the world of finance, no one really has proper assistance. There's sort of the super wealthy, or on the scale of the world, there's the super wealthy that have personal assistants. And then there's the rest of us that are led to have conversations with other people or go and look at comparisons of products. And actually, it's just a hugely underserved thing. And so actually, if you can start to give someone some help, that's a massive opportunity, not only for customers, but for the product providers in that world.
Absolutely.
So it starts to actually change and shift the marketing paradigm, because essentially what is marketing? It's really a tax, right? The other side of that is actually people don't fundamentally care about financial products. They don't actually care, I'm sorry, HSBC. And people in the room, no one cares about
the products themselves.
Yeah, no one cares about that. But what they care about is the things they want to do in their life day to day. So really our focus with marketplaces is to take data and take customer experience, understand what customers are trying to achieve in their lives, and match them with a product, to basically allow them to do that as quick as possible, and then get back to the really nice thing they want to do. And for us, that's the most basic proposition, but a super complex one that we're driving towards with HSBC. So.
And how do you differentiate yourself, both of the marketplaces? Maybe just talk a little bit about what do you do a little differently? You talked about not focusing so much on the products, but more of the experience. Are there things that you feel like you still have to accomplish that you haven't really embarked on yet?
Well, first of all, getting that recommendation really accurate to the job that somebody wants to do. That is a big data challenge, and that's kind of the story of open banking is the same story of why we're seeing AI happen today, because actually neural networks have been around since the 1950s. We've known how to do that. It's not really been applicable until now, because we have computational power that's cheap enough and can be achieved in a short amount of time, and the data sets that can do it. So I think we differentiate ourselves, and the thing we care about is that end-to-end fulfillment. We don't own a financial product, so actually we believe we can be agnostic in the marketplace, and I think that's a key difference, and one that will become more apparent as more marketplaces open. We'll start to see that actually independent assistance is valued. Again, what we care about fundamentally at Bud is really the intelligence around that. The experience will change month to month, year to year.
Right. Lorena?
Well, I think as a millennial, just about, as a consumer, I would like this side of things to be just done for me. Give me a recommendation, I click on some button, and then it's done, fulfillment done. But from the bank's perspective, this is obviously very risky. So, and this is why this type of collaboration is very good, because Bud provides the vision, the technology, but as a bank, we're very good at managing risks and protecting customers. I guess to your question of what hasn't been done, this part is still a long way to go, and we're working on it, of how can we make customers' life easier, make that one-click journey easier without losing the protection over the customers.
Yeah, good point. Very good point. Maybe we get a little more practical for the audience of how this partnership was set up. Contracting, I think it was 5 to 6 months to get it done.
Yeah.
But give us a feel for what that process was, some of the gotchas, and then things that you could give them to say, this is how you would do it differently. Be honest and candid.
The beginning of it, I was sat in HSBC and they were doing an open day for different fintechs to come and talk. And one of the senior people at HSBC did a talk before about some of the things they were trying to achieve. So I got on stage on a pulpit and just addressed that person, called them by name and said, let the world do all this stuff for you. So that's kind of how it started.
It's pretty bold.
Yeah, it was bold. I don't know if we're going to do all of it, but you could at least try. So that's where it began. But then I was introduced to Lorena, and basically the conversation was, Lorena will be the person that will help you get this done. And I think many kind of meetings and scoping sessions and writing on whiteboards and figuring out how things work. But we'd been setting up to try and do this with the bank for about a year, as in we'd built our core tech, and then we were like, okay, how do we facilitate and do this with the bank? We'd spoken to other banks, we'd got through processes, we'd started some early trials with banks, but for us it was actually the alignment of again, along Lorena's point, is that what we're trying to achieve with this thing. Mm-hmm. If you're trying to do a bit of aggregation, and we as a fintech kind of knew that would be kind of table stakes in a year's time. So I guess it was, and Lorena's experience of, has used Alipay and all these kind of things, and actually bringing in things that have worked and different things, and I think that's where we got to, and that's when it became quite an interesting proposition when we actually got the approval of, yes, we could actually distribute third-party non-HSBC products through this platform. That was like a
huge milestone.
Yeah, it's a big moment. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the platform model and changing the business model. That's where they're going to have to be challenged some on how do you operationalize in the way where you grow market share, you're growing revenue. How is this model changing for the banks? Do you feel like what's being done differently? It was a set-aside group to help drive the fintech process, but what do banks have to do differently for their model going forward?
Well, I think in a few years' time, as consumers, when we look back, we might find it strange. Why did I think of HSBC loan, Santander loan, Barclays loan that way? As Ed said, I just want to borrow some money to get my garage fixed or whatever. So platform, I personally think, is going to be a lot more common than we currently see. So you find someone, or some provider, banks or fintechs or a different provider, tech giant, that you feel comfortable with, that provides you with the experience you're most comfortable with, and ultimately you could be getting the same thing.
Right.
Yeah, I think every single service we use in our life is something called jobs theory, which is it serves a job that I want to get done in my life, and this is really about facilitating a piece of technology that allows customers to get jobs done more easily in a place where they already are, which is the bank app essentially. That is already a custodian of trust, custodian of data, and can be trusted to do that. Obviously, what we've seen recently in the world of big tech is that that trust is hard earned, and there's a lot around data protection that banks are very good at, and actually the value exchange of trust happening from the bank app just starts to make a little bit more sense as we introduce some of these journeys. I think.
Good. Maybe the last question, then we'll go to the audience for any questions. But you think about fintechs. Maybe provide just a little feel for what fintechs should think about as they approach the banks. Maybe what the banks should keep in mind as fintechs are getting engaged in your business model, and be open about what those things are that you feel like they need to know to help them with a smoother process. Anyone want to start? I mean, the fire's starting to go out.
I can start. Yeah. So, I guess the lucky thing with fintechs is actually that fintechs, most of them are regulated in some way. So they've been through a lot of the process that it takes to onboard and work with a large institution, which is, data security, all the fun stuff, right? That you have to go through, and hopefully you're doing all those things that you've said you're going to do. Well, not hopefully, you should be. And I think the key is to identify a key value proposition, again, what is the job that I'm going to do and help bank customers? Again, and then it's thinking about, well, that's great, but also what is the story around how this is uniquely different for this institution, how this helps, how I can align my goals with the institutional goals. If you want to know what HSBC's or another bank's institutional goals are, you can find it. It's online, you know. You can pull it down and you can read what the CEO has said for this year, and you just align yourself to that. I mean, that's like classic sales, right? I'm probably sure in this room everyone knows. And then again, sometimes in this world of partnerships and collaboration, we forget that the beginning of all of that is a sales process.
Right.
And it's getting that down and making sure that you know where your weaknesses are and where your strengths are.
I think from my memory, Bud struck me as a fintech that's built with collaboration with banks in mind. So working with them is very easy in that sense because they've considered all the regulations, they've considered all the restraints. They understand that working with banks is not working with another fintech. So that definitely helped. But from the bank side, I would say, sitting in my seat, I would say the key to working with fintechs is be very respectful of their time. I'm not terribly responsive on the likes of LinkedIn's or emails with, there's an offering. That's not because I'm ignoring them, it's more because I know at this point of time, we can't work with you for this reason or the other. So it's kind of respect in a little bit weird way. And also when you actually work together, be very mindful that they are not another large corporation. Rounds of meetings will just wear them out, and the time they can be spending on building a fantastic product with you, they spend on the governance meetings. That's not wise use of time, and they need to be paid very on time. So.
Great, fantastic. Well, let's go to the audience. I'd love to hear any questions that you have for Ed or Lorraine. That one right here, and here.
Hello, my name's Will Davis. I'm from One Savings Bank. I'm a little bit skeptical about the marketplace model, and I'm hoping it's down to my lack of understanding. So in my mind, the customer will be offered a product based on the data that you've gathered from the products, the customer's financial transactions, and the artificial intelligence will say to that customer, you need a credit card, and here's a credit card which is available through our marketplace. Now, unless that marketplace has every single product that's available to that, or that customer is eligible for in the UK, then there's a possibility that the product that you're going to offer that customer is a worse interest rate and will eventually put the customer in a worse situation by using your marketplace as opposed to going to the whole of the market. So are there any controls in place to make sure that the best customer outcomes are always achieved?
Yeah, and so it's a really good point. It's something we work really hard on, is to figure out how can we, within a limited product set to begin with, get the customer the best outcome. And really, the way our model works is it's about suggesting what products might be relevant to the customer based on what we understand to them. Now, something actually that you bring up is that if you look at even the massive comparison sites, there's something that they say which is their whole of market. I'm not here to say that. No one's whole of market. Whole of market is actually 50%. So there is really almost no way to take whole of market. But the other side is that you have to have the customer protection on the other side. So there might be something that's a way better rate, but it might be from a super high risk company that has predatory. We've seen its predatory behavior before. So it's really about balance. It's a balancing act of all the different, taking into account all the different things, which actually hasn't been really done before properly. Is to look at this interest rate might be better, but actually on the way the repayments or the hidden fees and all the complexity that goes in, it might be actually a worse off product. Because if we think about interest rates, that's kind of like the headline marketing tool, but actually there's a lot hidden underneath that. And I think that's something that we're striving towards, and that's why our marketplace will grow probably quite slowly. We have 100 partners, between 70 and 100. I have to double check where we are with all the partner agreements. That we can supply on a marketplace. But again, it takes a while to actually train our models and say, okay, what do these products do, what do they don't do? So it's a massive point, something we work really hard. We work directly with the FCA on. But again, what we're competing with right now is no transparency whatsoever to a customer. And so this is a very beginning. We're not there yet.
Thank you.
Another question? Yeah.
Thanks. Hi, Carl Worrell, BCS Consulting. Fascinating insights, thank you for those. Just building off the following question, network effects are clearly going to be key to a healthy marketplace. To what extent do you think there'll be a convergence of marketplace and platforms in the, I guess, medium to long term? And tied to that, and you don't need to name the providers, but do any providers in your marketplace demand exclusivity?
Sorry, do they have an
last bit?
exclusivity?
Yes, do they demand? Because that would obviously then hamper the
Yeah. Do you want me to take
multiple
that?
marketplaces.
Okay. So everyone, as there's many financial institutions in the room, everyone wants exclusivity. No one has exclusivity. That is core to our proposition, and people have tried, and I can see why that would work from them. But again, it goes back to the point the gentleman made, is that really isn't very protectionist of customers at all. What was the first question? Because there was two. Yeah, the convergence. So like, we can't deny history, right? I mean, if we look at networks and network effects and platforms, it tends to go towards like oligopolies. There's never one, but there's always a couple. So I think, due to network effects, maybe there's an oligopoly, but actually the interesting thing about open banking is because it supplies that network in which those APIs will have access to everyone. So actually, you might be on one service and I might be on another service, but we can still make payments to each other because it's all been tokenized through one network. Then actually, who owns the experience? They're still competitive around that because actually because the APIs are somewhat open, then there is still the ability for someone to spin up a new experience very quickly and create something. For example, I don't actually see that when we talk about WeChat and Alipay, they're actually closed ecosystems. You might think they're open, but they're not. If you try and make a new dating experience in WeChat and compete with something that Tencent have invested in, you're not probably going to be able to do that. So actually, I still think we won't necessarily see open platforms in the financial world for the next 5 years, but at some point, someone will make an open platform, and I think that will be a really exciting thing. So I don't know if that answers.
Great question, great answer. One more, maybe time for one more question. All right, Ed and Lorena, thank you so much. It was fantastic.
Thank you.
Appreciate the partnership.
Thank you.